Joseph Jaffe is not famous. I'm kind of famous. I'm Jerry Springer. And Jaffe is no host. He'd be lucky to be in my audience, let alone on my show. Well, maybe he's crazy enough to be on my show. I take that back. And that's not a good thing.
Woody-hoo!
Woody-hoo! Out here in the stream, as in the streaming era, I fight for my dreams. I get my heart into my living.
You encourage drinking or marijuana use on the show?
I don't need a fight, cause Evelyn's right. Or you could sponsor an emu. I'm Batman.
That's your tweetable moment, folks. That's your tweetable moment. If Mark Zuckerberg makes a metaverse, is that Web3? No, it's Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse.
He's like us. He's flawed.
Just a little segue.
That's some dope shit, dude. That's really, really nice.
Woody-hoo!
Woody-hoo! Woody-hoo! Well, welcome everybody. It is Tuesday. It is March 8th. I always have to check just in case. And we got a little bit of a new look here. We've got a new intro to the show. I hope you like it. I put a little bit of that sneak preview onto Instagram a little bit earlier, and I was enjoying it so much. I'm not going to lie that I almost forgot to put myself on camera. I guess that's a good thing. It's a good thing when you actually enjoy what you do so much that you feel entertained by yourself. Wait, maybe that's the definition of narcissism as opposed to thought leadership. And that's what we're discussing today with the very famous Julie Morris. We're going to be discussing thought leadership. How do you put the thought in thought leadership? How do you put the leaders in thought leaders? Tomorrow, Dr. Ingrid Mura and Manny rockstar Manny Cabo in the house. I've got to know Manny over the last couple weeks, and I like what I see. I like what I hear. Actually, I don't like what I see. I haven't seen him yet, but I do like what I hear. Manny, has he got a voice for radio, for TV, for everything. He was actually on The Voice, but more on that on Thursday. Lubna is here, and she said, hilarious. Well, thank you. I aim to please. If we are not laughing, we are crying. And unless we are crying, tears of joy, that's bad. So this is where hope, positivity, and optimism come together, converge with a little bit of marketing if there is time left over. So Julie Morris will be on the show soon enough. And then on Friday, NFT Fridays, we have the non-fungible people in the house. I guess I'm non-fungible. I mean, there's only one of me, right? So non-fungible people in the house. I'm excited for that. I'm also excited on Friday to give away a girlies NFT. I don't know what the floor is right now, but when last I checked, it was about 0.11, which at the current price of Ethereum is about $4. I'm just kidding. But what a wonderful collection. Go back and watch the episode. Dave and Valerie, father and daughter. She's 15 now. She was 14 when she created this collection. It is sold out. And if you want to win a girly NFT, all you got to do is subscribe to the show, paste your YouTube username in my Discord, my not famous Discord server, which means you got to join the server. You'll join Girlies NFT, join their community, follow us on Twitter, give up your firstborn child, and an NFT should be winging itself to you through the metaversian, internetian radio waves or something like that. So find the giveaways channel in my not famous Discord, and the rest is history. Here is something that is not history. It is present and it is future. Jaffe coin being given away every single episode. That is the QR code that is live right now, 1:05 p.m. March 8th, 2022. And for the next 55 minutes, you can get yourself some Jaffe coin. Who knows? You might just be able to afford that virtual Tesla one day in the metaverse. So there is your QR code. Let's move on with the seated soliloquy. And you know what? I'm going to do this because the seated soliloquy today is called the metaverse experience. And it is actually inspired, ironically, by a real experience. This was me last night. I was in the city and I met up IRL with Chris Messina. Chris Messina, the inventor, did you know, of the hashtag? Seriously, he invented the hashtag. Imagine inventing something that billions of people use every day. Chris has a coin on the Rally network, as do I. And we met up IRL. We had such a good time that I fell asleep on the train, missed my stop, and my wife had to come and pick me up from two stations further than where I was meant to go. It was a cold and chilly evening, and I'm not talking about the weather outside, but more on that another time. Let me tell you why I wanted to talk about the metaverse experience. Well, first of all, Chris and we went to a place called the Flatiron Room. And it is a place where you actually go in, and if you have a look at this the chart, you will see behind me are all these bottles. Look at the padlocks locked up. Now, these bottles are bottles that you buy. You actually buy them, and then you get a customer number, and that is your bottle. And so every time you come there, you can actually say, you can give your customer number or your membership card, and they will not let you, it's yours. You can drink from your own bottle. And what's also kind of cool about that is that if you send a guest there or a client, they can also access your bottle. And then the scotch comes to the table. We were doing some flight tasting, and it comes neat, and then there's a little dropper where you drop a little bit of water. It was an experience. This was a whiskey experience. It was a consumption experience. It was a Flatiron Room experience. There was live jazz in the background. It was the first time that I'd seen or experienced live music in over 2 years. And that's why I let myself go just a little bit. That's why I ended up falling asleep on the train, because I was just so happy to be back in IRL, in the real world again. No masks needed in New York City, no vaccine cards. But I got to thinking, now that we live in the metaverse, what is the metaverse experience? What is the metaverse experience? How do we move from a consumption or a transaction, one-off or otherwise, into something that can transcend, that can be so much more utilitarian, more richer, more emotional? What is the metaverse experience? And the reality is it doesn't exist yet, but we can define it. We can create it. We can create something that moves beyond functional benefit, that moves beyond what it does, how it delivers what was advertised, and instead we can create something that can be memorable. And Joe Pine, who wrote The Experience Economy, he was on the show, and as you recall, and that's pun intended, he said that the definition of experience is about being memorable. It is not an experience if you don't remember it, if you don't want to remember it, and if other people don't remember it as well. So think about whether we live in a real world, a digital world, an audio world, a virtual world. It is a world that needs experiences in order to be able to be transformative. And that, my friends, is the game that we're in, or the game that we should be in. Brian Piper is here, and he said, looks like you were enjoying a little tasting there. Brandy scotch. No, my friend, it was only single malt scotch, and I am still feeling the pain right now. But now, enough about pain. Let's move into pleasure. It is my pleasure to introduce Julie Morris to you. And a little bit about Julie. Julie Morris is a mother of two. She's a surfer and a skier from California, now based in the Dallas area, a very natural place to go to from California. She's director of strategic communications at Persona Media, where she helps leaders become thought leaders. That looks like a lot of writing, helping authors with books, speaking prep, creating video and audio content. And it is. She has worked with thought leadership and marketing clients, including Fortune 500 leaders, national, family, and community-based foundations, a national grant maker membership, and so much more. It's amazing just looking at her bio. Political campaigns, members of Congress, cybersecurity leaders, social impact leaders. I got to ask her about how members of Congress can be thought leaders. She writes daily on thought leadership, helping many to learn why, how, and the tactics to serve at scale. So much meat. Let's bring her right on. Julie Morris, welcome to the show.
Hello, so glad to get to be here with you today. And I have so many questions just based on your seated soliloquy. So I'm excited
That's
for
so
our
funny.
conversation.
You have questions for me. I have
do.
questions for you.
Well, where do you normally like to begin when you, so I've watched a couple of your videos and it's always an experience. And, going back to what you shared, you give an experience. And
Great.
so
Memorable.
love that.
Memorable.
Yes, absolutely. So I noticed we've, like, to your point, we've got a new intro, there's a new background. What other things are you going to change going forward with the experience you give here on your show?
Well, I'll tell you what. Oh, I love the fact that you're making me verklempt. I love the fact that you are already turning the tables on me and interviewing me. That's fantastic. I'll go with it. I'll go with it like you cannot believe. I mean, the answer is, and I've thought about this a lot, which is, in order to survive and thrive, you have to be a marathoner, an ultra marathoner. It has to be about endurance. You got to stay the course, but you cannot get stale. So my belief is you got to keep mixing things up.
Yes.
And the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think you got to break it. Even if it is fixed, and if it's broken, you can fix it from being broken, but it's the ability to stay fresh. And that's why, like, when I work on a new intro, for me, it's looking back, it's reminding myself of the memorable moments and being able to stitch them together to bring something new. So I feel fresh today, not only because I have a new guest, but because of that intro. That was enough for me to feel like a change is as good as a holiday. So there are many more things. There are many more things planned, no doubt. But at the moment, I really am trying to lean in with this positioning of what I would call the daily show for business. But at the same time, I'm also moving forward and allowing myself to be pulled by the current of Web3. And who knows, this could become the official talk show of Web3. And that wouldn't be a bad thing, because there aren't many people doing business shows in video, and there aren't any doing Web3 either. So what do you think?
I love that idea. I think that there is a huge benefit to being a first adopter or a first to leap into a space. And if you see an opportunity and there's enough in you, so General Colin Powell had this decision-making, I don't know if you call it a theory or what, but he would say, if you have between 40 to 70% of the information needed or the information available, that you should go ahead and leap. So to me, you're seeing an opportunity, you're about 40 to 70% sure, give or take, that this is going to be a thing, that this is going to be a space to carve out. So go ye therefore.
I love that, 40 to 70%. Now there's a huge difference between 40 and 70.
Yep. So, and in some areas, you can't have much more than that. Like in this case, this area for you, I don't see that you could really have much more than 50%. Like you can look back and go, okay, when do we see trends take off? And when do we see people stepping into that space of media and thought leadership in this realm that you're describing? I mean, Web3, I have studied this on Twitter and I have like this much knowledge. So it's hard to wrap your head around in some cases. So if you're able to wrap your head around it enough that you think you're going to have enough to talk about on a daily show, that to me is enough evidence right there that you need to do it.
Well, I'm going to build on top of what you just said, and the beauty of 40 to 70% information is that when nobody else has anything more than that, then
Mhm.
there is that's leadership, right? I always say
Yes.
leadership by definition means no one is in front of you.
Mhm.
And in this case, nobody else is, what I don't know and what I can't figure out or haven't figured out yet, I know that for the most part nobody else has. And
Yep.
so what I also do is I push off against, Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or Trevor Noah, not because they're competition. I mean, they're Goliath and I'm David, but because I look at them as establishment, as
Yep.
incumbents. They are the
Yep.
gold standard. And my brand is to be irreverent, is to be a challenger. And
Mhm.
so to kind of triangulate against the status quo. And for
Yes.
better or for worse, they are the status quo.
It's not too much worse. I love that. And I think so that's an interesting thought though, that leadership implies that there's no one ahead of you. I honestly can't think of many instances that that would work for me. So is that something that you coined, or is that something that it should just be common knowledge that I hadn't assumed as common
Well,
knowledge?
I don't know. Maybe it's a good question. Maybe sometimes there's the ability to just see things slightly differently.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so when we talk about leadership generally, it's about this
Mhm.
idea of, it's tough at the top, but it's even worse at the bottom.
Hmm.
And we always think about leadership in terms of the people that are chasing, the
Yep.
followers. Tom Peters will say the role of a leader is to create more leaders. So we're always looking backwards, we're looking behind, or we're looking
Yes.
down as
Yes.
opposed to forward. And part of that forward looking is
Mhm.
there is a fear, right? Because there is no
Yes.
precedent, because,
Yes.
but there's also, for me, exhilaration in terms of being able to
Yes.
say the slate is clean, the canvas is blank. Let's go out and create.
Yep. Okay. Love that. Yeah, it's funny with thinking about the work a lot of the work I do ends up being around mindset. It's very few folks that are fully comfortable with this idea of what thought leadership looks like. So if they're now having to put themselves out there in this new way and it's very uncomfortable and they feel like there are people far more qualified than me to speak to these things. Why me? Why now? Why do I need to carry the torch or carry the banner for this idea? And um, so determining what leadership really looks like for you. But I think that what you're landing on is that you lead uniquely, right? So as we're describing how you're going to lead in this space, and that I think really pulls through to a lot of thought leaders. It's like you lead uniquely. You have this lived experience, you have the expertise you bring to the table, and you're able to survey the field. And someone has to be willing to say, okay, I don't exactly know where I'm going yet, but I'll know when I get there. And then it will change again. And we have to just go there confidently.
This conversation will take us home to the promised land before I've even had a chance to insert one thought. And I love it. This is what I love. By the way, this is always my show notes. This is how I prep.
Love it.
I mean, it has to be because, and I love conversations like this. So I want to go back to two things you said. The first thing is this idea of why me and why now.
Yep.
Immediately that conjures up this idea of imposter syndrome. And
Yes.
I guess my question for you is, does a thought leader have to answer those questions? Why me and why now?
I think yes. Maybe not everyone, and maybe you just are okay with the level of definition you've put around it. But I think for the most part, because it requires so much of us to be consistent and to take what's inside and have to go through this exercise of yanking it out, taking your genius and putting it out there. That's There's going to be three stages of this, right? It's like you have the honeymoon, the easy place where you start off and there's so much energy and wind in your sails and it's a blast and you're seeing immediate rewards and recognition and people stopping you. Hey, I love what you wrote about that. And I read this and that was great. And it helped me. And so that's the honeymoon. But then there's the third stage, which is the end zone. And it's like, I've written the book, or I influenced policy, or we built this community, and look, now I can see, I can kind of tie a bow around it. But then there's the muddy middle, right? This is stage 2. This is like 60% of the journey. If I'm throwing a number out there, it is the hardest part. And this is the part where if you don't have a why, and if you don't have a how, and if you don't have a me, and why this, why me, why now, you're gonna stop in the muddy middle where nobody gets it. You don't get it. You're tired of getting up early. You feel embarrassed by something you may have said. It didn't come out great. You tried to put yourself out there in a community environment. Anyway, like so much can go wrong, and you have to understand why you're here in the first place. And then it also has to help you understand what you're saying just every time you put yourself out there to communicate. If you don't know who you're communicating to, and there wasn't a why behind it, no one will get what you're saying. No one will feel like it's for them. It won't land. So,
as you were saying that, you went with honeymoon, and then you went with end zone, I think. And then I was like, wait, I think what was number 2 again?
Muddy middle. And I know now, I'm glad we're back there.
the muddy middle, and this is great because the honeymoon. I used to talk even about like when someone got laid off or they resigned, they would go through the honeymoon phase where suddenly everyone would come out of the woodwork and they'd be like, hey, can you come and speak to us, and can you do this, and we want to pick your brain, and and then fast forward to the end zone, which is we always like to begin with the end in mind. We know the goal, we know the destination, but it is the journey. It is the muddy middle. It goes back to the endurance part. The ugly stuff, sometimes the stuff that sucks. That's the hard part. The consistency, the ability. I mean, going back to and we'll talk about LinkedIn in a moment. Somebody writes an article and it goes viral, and they're the darlings of LinkedIn for a while. But then how do you create the consistency, the newsletter, the ability to keep going and stay on schedule and routine? That is the hard part.
Of course it is. And that's why most people don't do this. I think really, it's not that they are lacking vision around what they would do with it. It's just that they cannot figure out for the life of them how they would step out of their day. I think most of us are wearing, I don't know how many hats. It doesn't matter if you're employed at a corporation or if you lead a company that you founded, or you're just a freelancer with one client, and it's just, everyone has so many roles, and we're all, I just posted I think yesterday, we're all so weary. We're pulled in so many directions. It is a very difficult and very alarming time to be alive, right? And so now I'm supposed to also be encouraging other people and be trying to take what freaks me out and talk about it, and even let people in on that journey. I mean, how uncomfortable could you possibly ask me to be here? I can barely get to the gym, I hear often from some women. I can barely get a shower in. Are you kidding me that you want me to add this to? The consistency is tough.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, shout out to Donna Bowling, who is watching on LinkedIn. Glad she is here. She's awesome. And she's also I'm seeing her partake in a tremendous amount of thought leadership lately. So I've been paying
Indeed.
attention.
I'll have to just do a plug for her. I work in, between thought leadership and marketing, I have met a number of people who work in the brand space. I had a session with her, and oh my goodness, she blew my mind. And so we're going to get to continue on. I think it's today we're scheduled, or tomorrow, and part 2, and figuring out, it's all our journey to figure out our personal brand. So follow that incredible woman.
Well, that's absolutely. And I hope she's enjoying watching the show today. Now, I want to go back again to what you just said, because first of all, you said that's why most people don't do it. And I think maybe there's a tiny little kind of caveat there, which is, well, a lot of people do it, but they don't do it well. Yeah. So that's important. I think there are people that believe it's easy, but I guess, and this is where it'll probably feed right back to you, they're going to give up. They're not going to stay the course because they don't realize how hard it is. So I think people view it as easy, and it isn't.
It always looks easy when it's not you, right? And then you start and you do it yourself. And so one of the reasons that I'm writing a book right now is because I work with authors. And I realized at one point, here I am doing public speaking right now. I hated this and I couldn't do it. And even, as recently as like 2 years ago, this would have been impossible to remember how to form a sentence knowing that other people were watching. So walking out the journey of learning how to public speak, walking out the journey of like, how hard is it to sit down and be faithful to do the book writing? Patricia Wooster is someone to follow for that. So this is difficult, all of these pieces. And yet the rewards are immense. And once you get started and you get to see what can come from it. But, I think one of the reasons that we do give up also is that if it doesn't feel a little bit selfish, and if it doesn't feel like probably a little prideful, and I hear a lot of people encountering and working through this idea of just the shame around like, I am so imperfect. Why do I need to be the one to kind of put myself out there? So it's just being authentic. It's being on a journey, but it's also, we build a platform for lifting up others, right? And so getting to just two women that I highly admire and mentioning them on a show today in hopes that other people will follow them and follow their work. What an honor to get to do that, right? There are so many other people groups and people that deserve to have the mic handed to them. And so if I can build a platform and then bring someone on with great ideas and hand them the mic and show the world this incredible leader, how great is that? So this hashtag that I have stuck with and will stick with forever, it's serve at scale. Influence is to serve at scale. We want to influence for good. And think about, it's not just for us. It's not just, so I have a lot of followers and I get this and this perk out of it. It's, let's see what we can do to influence for good. And I think you really can speak to that. So if I go on your website, Joe, I can see a lot of how you're trying to make change. You're trying to influence people to think differently and do business differently, and all of these ideas that I really admire and would love to delve into.
Yeah, and we will. And I was waiting for the right time, and I think you just created the perfect opportunity, because it is International Women's Day today, and you highlighting other exceptional women. You are an exceptional woman as well, and this is an opportunity to really pay tribute, to all the women in my life, all the women that I've come into contact with. It is a wonderful day. It is not necessary for one day. It is every single day. But you know what? It is a day that could be today. It is today, and may today be the first day for some others, and for others a continuation of what happened yesterday, where momentum takes place, and where we will just not rest. And I regard myself as a male ally, and I've heard this a lot from talking to so many women, that women need male allies. Well, I am, privileged and humbled and honored to be a male ally, but ultimately to make my mother proud, who's watching at the moment.
Wow.
Growing up, being brought up by a single parent, by my mom. It is a special day today, and so that's why when you spoke about Donna, and I was like, yes, this is when we bring it in.
Oh my goodness. So I lost my mother very unexpectedly back. I think it's been about 12 years now. Thank you. And I miss her so much. And so as I'm watching what's happening in Ukraine, and I'm watching just as we learn more about what has happened with when one country, one leader wants to do harm and take over and inflict an agenda. I mean, between Syria, between Ukraine, it's like we are watching mothers have to hand over their children to strangers to get them onto a train, to get them to safety. I mean, we have it so good. And so just to get to know that your mom is here, like what a gift, and what an honor. What is her name?
Natalie. Well,
Natalie.
I call her Mom.
Of course.
Or Mommy.
Well, welcome, Natalie. It's a wonderful chance to get to be with your son today, and I hope you're enjoying.
I'm sure she is. And Donna's sending a love back to you. And Mr. Brian Dale Fanzo is here saying, Happy International Women's Day 365. Fanzo is our correspondent today. Today is a day on Tuesday that we generally focus here on diversity, equity, inclusion,
Yay.
justice. And so this is Fanzo's segment. Take it away, Fanzo.
What's up, friends? Brian Fanzo, iSocial Fans here on this International Women's Day. A shout out and love to all of the amazing women, not only changing the world, but impacting our lives, 365 days a year, not just one day a year. And I actually think one of the things that's so important around conversations, especially like days like today, and it kind of links to like not only diversity and inclusion, but really education, right? Education around all aspects of, everything from empowerment to equality and pay to our ability to understand that just because we don't have people in our circle doesn't mean that that's an excuse for us not to expand our circle or find creative ways of kind of bridging ourselves kind of outside of our existing domain. And I think there is a change and shift that is required, but that change and shift is required because I think we all agree that we must change, and the ways of the old, especially into this Web3 world that we're moving to, it's important to not just carry Web2 behaviors and traits into this Web3 future, and that includes all of the conversations from the importance of pronouns to the idea that the conversation isn't good enough being had just when it's women are in the room. If there is a group of only men having a conversation and there is something that is said that is either belittling or is not empowering or not moving us forward, it's our job, it's our role in these opportunities to educate, right, to lift people up. And I think as we shift into this Web3 future and we can reimagine the future, I'm excited where our opportunities lie for us to not only empower each other, but to really focus on the education side, because there's plenty of negativity in the world today. There's plenty of people that are willing to break people down. But I think those of us that are willing to educate, empower, and hopefully, hire and, celebrate are going to make, the real impact in the world. So that's what I got. Happy International Women's Day. Make it a good one. Cheers.
Strong.
Yeah, as always. And Lubna says, Fanzo in the house. Yeah, we like him coming into the house. He's welcome anytime in this house. I want to shift gears to something, speaking about thought leadership and brands for a second. Last year, Burger King kind of on International Women's Day kind of put their whopper in it, or their foot in it, and they came out with a tweet that said women belong in the kitchen, and then when you actually went a little bit lower, what you realize is that it was a little bit of a bait and switch, a little bit of link baiting to actually talk about an initiative where they were actually trying to put more women chefs into the kitchens, in a male dominated industry. But unfortunately, the sentiment was lost in what was just lazy and just kind of almost sleazy marketing. You'll notice that in this little homage, it says Burger King may have deleted the tweet, but we'll never forget. The internet does not forget. Google does not forget. Here is another tweet that said, I knew there was a reason I've been avoiding Burger King my whole life. I studied it. I absolutely went and made sure that I put an entire case study together. I taught my students about it. And then because it is International Women's Day today, I went and tweeted, and I said, hey, Burger King, what are you doing for International Women's Day this year? Here is the response that I got from Burger King.
Nada.
Now, I want to, there go the crickets. I want to go and actually show you. I mean, this is their, I think maybe I might have scared them off Twitter, because I went to Twitter today and they have 1.9 million followers. And what I actually realized is their last tweet was February 22nd. I have never seen a brand be so absent. It almost seems like they just stayed away from it from Women's Month. There is nothing coming out of Burger King at the moment. This is just incredible to me. And when
Wow.
you actually look at tweets and replies, all they really are doing is just responding again and again and again to all people that are complaining, saying, hey, please send us a direct message so we can follow up. Hey, please, we're sorry to hear that. We're sorry to hear that. Please send a direct message. We're sorry to hear that. Please send a direct message. So it, to me, it's absolutely fascinating that they seem to have, can we even say, given up?
I can't fathom. So if it wasn't for the fact that we saw those service replies, I would almost think that someone lost login access or something like that.
Yeah.
So what a tremendous bummer. And when going back to the tweet that they did for last year, I have to be suspicious that there were not women at that conversation table when they were planning that marketing, or maybe there were, but there just didn't feel like there was cultural safety to speak up and go, hey, no, please. and to be trusted to say that. Or maybe it was just a bad decision all around, but still, this is a wonderful reason on why we need to have a multitude of voices and diversity at the table, because you're missing something if you don't.
I mean, it's almost, they say it's not just good business sense, it's common sense, because if you are serving a population that is diverse, then at a minimum, your service should contain a mirror of that diversity.
Indeed.
At a minimum. And it's funny because I can't delete this from I think it was Pauline Brown, the ex chairperson of LVMH, that the rate of women leading. So this is a little older. This was, I think she was on the show about a year and a half ago. The rate of women leading companies on the S&P 500 was just at 6.4%. We have to do better. We got to do better. And to your point, Julie, don't just put them in the room, and then not give them a voice, or if they have a voice, not listen to that voice. Because you're right. If women, there's no way, and we can say this unequivocally without even knowing, as Bill Maher would say, I don't know this for a fact, I just know it's true, that there were no women that worked on that campaign.
Yeah. And so where do we go from here? So if you're that brand, any thoughts, recommendation on what would you tell them to do today? Can they still be funny? Can we still be snarky and yet not stupid?
Snarky and not stupid. Yes, you do that by being snarky and not stupid.
Yes.
But there are a couple of answers. I mean, the one answer is this idea of self-awareness, but also understand its identity. If you know who you are and you know who you aren't, if you are comfortable within your skin, whether you are a corporate or not, even if your skin is this artificial container called brand, that allows you to be able to figure out what your guidelines and what your guardrails are. And so it really does come back to the fact that if you don't know who you are, how do you expect anybody else to? There is that. And then there's the fact that, and I'll throw it right back to you as well, which is what does corporate thought leadership look like? I mean, I know what it is as an individual, as an author, but what is it to be? Can a corporation be a thought leader? Can a brand be a thought leader?
Yes. So I'll say this though, when you're a very small brand, often thought leadership at the brand level ends up looking like thought leadership at the C-suite level. Your senior leadership is going to be the one to really carry the power and the weight of the brand. So often we'll get brought in when the C-suite folks just do not have a real concept around it. And so then we have to build a brand through them, because a brand, no one wants to follow a brand that has a very few amount of followers, right? So now, but if you're a large corporation, 100%, it is no longer an option like to sit in silence. If you are a brand, if you are a company right now, you are leading. And you're either leading by saying nothing, and that's your position, that you are not necessarily a leader, or you're leading because you have a position and you're taking a stance in the day-to-day things of life in the world and policy. We're seeing, like with the Voting Rights Act, and with at the state level, we're seeing legislation get put into effect that affects a lot of people's lives and not necessarily for the better. So if you're a brand doing business in that state and you're not saying anything, Gen Z especially is looking at you and seeing that you are not of substance for them and that you don't have much to offer. And we could point to millennials and all of us, we want to see you exercising our dollars for the betterment of society. So what do you think?
No, I mean, it's something that I know that you care a lot about and think about, which is this idea that we have an expanding, influential, and very, very lucrative, not even one segment or demographic. I'm teaching marketing at the moment, and as we look at the shrinking, dwindling baby boomers and their influence in the marketplace, and the rise of the millennial and the Gen Zers, and certainly coming of age millennials in terms of buying houses, getting married, having kids. The oldest millennial right now is 42 years old, turning 42 this year. We can't even think about them as millennials. I remember actually just in my class citing a study that actually said millennials would, believe this or not, would rather give up their pinky than lose their phone. Can you believe that? They would rather cut off their baby finger than lose access to their phone. But we can't think of them that way. But what you are saying is that we need to be thought doers, not thought leaders. We have to implement, and people are watching us. And if we can't turn the hot air and the huffery and puffery into meaningful change, we're going to get left behind.
We are. So it's both an opportunity and a burden. It's a duty. It is the role. And so I think the one of the worst things that you can do is just sit on this for as long as you possibly can get away with it. You're losing your competitive edge. You don't want to wait until until you get called out for the absence of thought leadership. So it can look like you're just doing a good job managing like the community that follows you, and you're just serving that community and you're showing up for them and you're demonstrating your culture, just being minimal. You don't have to go become an advocate in Congress or something like that to be a thought leader as a brand. But there is an opportunity. And very often we're so busy, and corporations have been so busy just trying to make shareholder value, that this idea of like, okay, now we also have to do this, and it's not a have to, it's a get to. So it's nothing but upside in my mind.
I want to play around with words for a second. And this was actually going to be the soliloquy initially, this idea of putting the thought into thought leadership, or maybe it's putting the leadership into thought leadership, because there really are two aspects here.
Yes.
And one thing you do professionally is you help leaders, you create the bridge and the roadmap for leaders to become thought leaders. So I mean, it's a nature-nurture question, but
Yes.
which came first? What comes first, the thought or the leadership?
It depends. I think different people are different things. So right now we're working on a project around Gen Z specifically. And we're seeing that to be competitive with Gen Z, to attract them to your corporation, you were going to have to grapple with the fact that they are walking in with a personal brand and very often see themselves as thought leaders already. And either you're going to work with them or work against them, right? So for them, I think the leadership will come after a while, but already they are a thought leader. So I know my kids are 9 and 11, and they have big grand ideas. They watch Dude Perfect and they see this huge platform that these folks are developing. And I mean, my gosh, like what parents have to grapple with these days. It's just so fun. So they know, though, already the power of personal brand. And if I describe, okay, I'm going to go and do this networking event, or thinking about going to South by Southwest, like they know why. It's to go and meet people and build network and build relationships, because those are very important to us all. But anyway, going back to your question, the leader or the thought leader, more often than not, we are working with folks like that are my age, that are, I call myself a geriatric millennial. My husband likes to call me, no, honey, you're really Gen X. Sorry to inform you of this, but
The greatest generation of all Gen X.
and pretty much almost all, all but forgotten. It's like we very naturally go from boomers to millennials in terms of priorities and whatnot. But anyway, there's very often, the older we are doing the leadership work. We have quite the CV to show for it. The credentials are there. There's no doubt that you're leading, but there's this frustration that now you're telling me I have to like pick up my head from my work and become a thought leader. It's just awful. Like, no, I don't want to. And it feels almost unjust. Like, can't my work speak for itself? Haven't I done enough? Why now must I do this added thing and put on this show almost? And I get it. It's very frustrating.
So at least you're helping and paving the way. This is one of your LinkedIn articles that says, write what to say, how to say it. So at least you're providing, again, that bridge, that ability to make the transition.
Yeah.
And I think what I pick up from what you were saying is, the younger you are, the more naturally this is going to come to you. And the muddy middle, let's go back to the muddy middle.
Yeah.
It's not, it's maybe not good enough just to sit on the sidelines, because everyone, I mean, if we say something of substance, there is the potential for it to be thought leadership.
Yes. But there is a real element that being willing to speak up and have it be just on occasion, it's perfectly fine. Not everyone really has to be in this place where if you just don't want to, you don't have to develop all of these pieces, right? But if you do, what will it do for you and how will it help you and help others? It's really worth looking at all of that. And even if you're very early in your career, thinking about what are the things that I would do now if maybe down the road I could see myself wanting to write or having a lot to say. There are some of us, my work with Donna, it's like she was going through some of my LinkedIn content as we're trying to figure out this whole idea of personal brand. And I won't roll my eyes. I won't. My own journey with this is quite fun. And she said, I don't think about these things the way that you do. And we forget that where we sit, where we grew up, where we, what conversations we've been a part of, who's been mentoring us, who's been speaking into our lives. And all of these things amount for this incredible synergy that can address certain things super uniquely and just really powerfully. So it was really validating to hear, just even for me, that I really do have something unique to say and something unique to bring to the table. So,
and we all do. I mean, everyone has a unique point of view. Everyone has a unique take. I mean, Lubna actually says, is work experience not enough? And in part it is enough because we all have our own story, our own journey, our own truth. And I guess it's the ability to take that and combine it with a point of view, which we should have, to form what is maybe the genesis or the spark of thought leadership.
yes. And often there's like the impetus, something. Okay. So I'll give you an example. If you are in corporate right now and you're looking around and going, okay, my buddies are starting consultancies and people are leaving, like maybe I want to do that too. Thought leadership is a great way to consider how you can get that figured out. What do I want to do? What would I want to provide as a service if I'm a consultant? So we want to work with people who believe in something, who want to stand for something. If I have my choice of HVAC repairman, I'm going to go online. I'm going to see who seems to be cool on social media, like just kind and thoughtful. So even if all you are is just trying to share that you're a kind and thoughtful person, that's perfectly okay. Just making a basic contribution to not your fellow man. I don't want to make it all sound super like just be a cool person online, and that's a great place to start. But if you can identify, look around, what sucks, right? Like, what do you care about? Where do you, with just a little bit of voice, you could make a real change. So
No, it's a great point, and actually, what that comment has in common with startups, with founders, is they also go through the same process. They go,
yes.
what sucks? You know, I always
Yes.
say to founders when I mentor them, open your eyes, open your ears. What do you hear? What do you see? You know, what is broken? Have you ever said, why on earth do I not know when the bus is going to come in New York City? Well, I mean, because I'm always missing it. Like, surely, what if we put a GPS tracker in the bus? What if it
Yes.
was digital? Boom. Guess what? It exists today. All innovation comes from pain, frustration,
Yes.
curiosity, and
Yes.
you don't have to be a visionary in order to make that leap.
Yes, I love that. So the sweet lady who spoke up and said, well, isn't what I do enough? Yes. Yes. If I said nothing else on women, International Women's Day, you are enough. What you do is enough. There's so much pressure to do more, be more, say more, this, that, the other thing. It's like, you are enough just like this. And just to be secure in your own skin and starting from that is great. But like, you probably will at some point hit a place where you go, ooh, this, I think I want to see something happen differently here. And then at that point, feeling brave that like you're not perfect, you don't have to be perfect, and to carry the, to speak up and to say something on that issue.
So I'm going to bring us back to
Yeah.
International Women's Day. I'm going to talk about how, for example, in Clubhouse, for the most part, many women are spoken over, or drowned out. At least historically, it's been that way, and probably still is that way. But let's actually, I want to bring back what Lubna for a second. She said, and what about people who are introverted and not feel comfortable to share? Now, you are one of those people, because in our fun fact segment, which we just glossed right over because this conversation has been so great, it actually transpires that you are not, that public speaking is not something that comes naturally to you. You have wild stage fright that you're working through. So you would never know it or think it in listening to you, in seeing you, in speaking with you. But how do you respond to Lubna when we think about, and you can look at it two ways. One, we could just talk about what do you do if you are introverted in general, but also maybe the double whammies, to be a woman and to be introverted in a male dominated world and on a male dominated stage.
So my husband is an introvert, a deep introvert, and we have our business together. Like, we're co-founders of our agency, and I will only schedule one call for him a week, because calls and just working things out, it's like he's perfect in an office the size of a closet with no windows, and I can't understand that for the life of me. But I respect it. And so for me, when I was working through what I do right now with public speaking, and still it's pretty minimal, I remember that I am speaking to just one person, like Lubna. If I'm pronouncing your name correctly, I hope I am. It's just to you, or it's just to Joe. And all we're doing is having this conversation, and we're just enjoying the topic. And my focus is on the topic, and my focus is on just enjoying and having a good time. So I do have to just accept that I could look back on this recording and regret, oh, I said this, my lips looked like that, and all of these frustrations, and whatever. It is what it is. Be secure in the fact that I am imperfect, and I'm perfectly okay with being imperfect. So here's the next thing though. Find people that you can follow. Get inspired by other people that are similar to you. If it's introvert, ambivert, whatever that thing is, there are leaders out there that you can Google and figure out, okay, Brene Brown, is she an introvert? Who are these other people out there that you can look at and see, what do they do? How do they cope? Very often leaders are pretty open with their journey. So there's probably a way to Google, women leaders who are introvert, how to be a thought leader. There's so much we can find. It's an amazing time to be alive. There's so much we can learn from each other and can. So hope that helps
And
a little.
and people are proving to be quite generous in especially over the last 2 years, where you can ask for help, and even if you don't ask for help, people will volunteer their help and support,
Yes.
and that is a beautiful thing. Now, I found I have an interesting build for you on the voodoo that you do so well. But before we get there, this is the quote that I found for you. Thought leadership is when a leader's thoughts are being used by leaders to lead others. You see, this got very Jedi for me as well. Thought
Very.
leadership is when a leader's thoughts are being used by leaders to lead others. So I think there's almost this interesting build on the idea. It's not just about the experience is memorable, but true thought leadership is portable and can move from from host to host, but actually in doing so, leaving behind this trail or this red thread of hopefully inspiration and change.
Yes. Indeed. I love that. If it's like when you're a parent and you hear your kid say to another kid something that you said to your kid, there is not much of a better feeling, right? So if I used to think of thought leadership almost as a primary vehicle for mentorship. If you can mentor like the next generation, if you can mentor your peers, if you can just help that way, if you can shorten the journey for those coming behind you, you will hear your words said and they will leave a legacy. You get one life. To your point, Joseph, we've seen so many people's lives cut short through COVID. It's shocking. We just had another loss. It's not over yet. If this brush with, all of our brush with death here isn't proving to be worth something, it's that you get one shot. And don't think like next year I'll, think about the legacy you have now and where you want it to grow toward. How do you want to scale that impact that you're having? Our ancestors, you came from a long line of people who have had to fight really hard for you to get to this place where you are sitting today. Like, what are you doing with that? So,
Get out the applause. It's a bit of I would drop the mic, but it's attached so to the stand over here.
thank you.
It's great, and I actually, Lubna said it as well. It's a very profound statement. This idea that effective thought leadership, as you said, is a vehicle for mentorship. But there's something else in what you said. Whether it goes back to security, it goes back to this inner confidence, it goes back to humility. It's the fact that you don't have to be excuse me, that's my thing, I said that, I trademarked that, you need to give me attribution. This is the ability to allow your thought leadership to be set free and to move freely. If you love someone, set them free. If you really are a thought leader, you need to set that thought leadership free and just allow the cosmic karma, I guess, to come back to you in terms of getting credit if that's really so important. That is what I took away from that statement, and it's a very, very powerful idea.
Thank you. Well, I love that. So another reason though to write is that you do have that publication date of those things and those thoughts, and being thoughtful and to trademark really great ideas and sentences is not the worst idea, especially women who are really the last ones often to think of things like, oh, should I look into guarding these ideas that are mine and that I've come up with, and being thoughtful about your intellectual property. Like, please do that. It's a Google search. You can learn so much in 5 minutes figuring out, like, when do I trademark my ideas?
Yeah, Lubna is on fire today. She said one of the best gifts is to hear your thoughts and ideas out of someone else's mouth. If you are out there in the metaverse, and you're looking to find your voice, develop your voice, figure out, I also agree, personal brand, thought leadership. Sometimes we have to do this because we're still trying to become comfortable as well with those terms. That's what Julie can help you do. And Julie, my build with what you said, which is, I'm going to coin a phrase, if I may, this idea of what I'm going to call one-off thought leadership. Everyone has in them one article, one manifesto, one piece of content or thought leadership that can live on their LinkedIn profile, that determines and communicates and differentiates their point of view. And whether we know it or not and like it or not, in this cutthroat corporate world, you may need that piece of thought leadership a lot sooner than you think, and it arguably will be even more valuable than a resume. Develop that, find your voice, create that piece of thought leadership, and who knows, it may just lead to a second and a third and a fourth.
I 100% agree. And I'll just say this, like, I volunteer helping people get through career transitions. Very often you'll get stuck in this place of like knowing that you are ready to make a change, and you yet cannot seem to get a call back, even though you're incredibly qualified. Network is everything. Having someone have a handout to you, or, like reach out a hand, like, hey, I know of something here, and let me open a door for you. But then if you have something on your LinkedIn profile that's you've written a piece that talks maybe about how you would lead in an environment that, how would I solve this problem in corporate America? How do I manage hybrid employees? How do I, if I can see that this person who's up for a role already is leading right here, and this is how they would communicate, and this is how they would teach, and this is how they would write for business. Like, all we do is email and meetings. So show me that you're leading right now. Show me what it would be like to have you working at my corporation. This is an amazing benefit of thought leadership.
It absolutely is. And, if you're looking for a place to start, I would just say start with Julie Morris, guest number 342. And if you want to get hold of her, you can find her on the Twitter. You can find her on Instagram. She is in the club. Let me tell you, she's in the club and she's in the clubhouse. But LinkedIn is where the magic happens. You can connect with Julie on LinkedIn, Julie Michelle Morris. Julie, I would have loved to have had a woman to send us off today, but I guess we're just stuck with Chuck Norris. And here's what Chuck had to say about you on International Women's Day.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And we will be back tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.